Welcome to Dimension Fold YouTube channel, and I'm your host Ken Goodsward. And today I've got a special guest, Scott Stewart, and Scott's a good friend of mine. We work together, and he's got a story to tell us that I think is I don't know, I haven't heard it yet. So hopefully it'll be strange and weird and mind blowing, but I don't know if it will or not. But let's get into it. So Scott, tell us. First of all, when and where did this happen?
Well, it's in a few places, which is what makes it interesting. It started about 25 years ago. And it actually started not far from where I live now, incidentally, which is kind of odd. So I'll start at the beginning, which is usually the best place to start any story. I was with two other friends, and we were hunting on the backside of Purdon Mountain. And we had been there for, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the day. And we were driving back in the dark very late. And there's a very long straight stretch after the Bowen River bridge. It's very long straight stretch, lots of hills, and then you start back getting close to the city. So when we came across the bridge, we seen a very intense amount of lighting on the right hand side of the road. And we see lots of logging, so we were under the impression it was just a logging setup, like a couple big yarders or whatever with their lights on it.
Right. So you're still pretty far out in the bush, like on a logging road.
No, we were now on the highway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got back onto the highway, and so we're on our way back into PG, and we're looking at the light, and it's intense. You could see the tops of all the trees. You could see it illuminating the clouds above. Like it was a very bright light, but again, dismissed in our minds because we see lots of logging and lots of nighttime logging stuff out here. But as we got closer, within maybe, I'm going to say half a kilometer of the actual to being perpendicular to where the light was coming from, it wasn't the same color as a standard like sodium bulbs. You get that kind of a orangey. If anybody at home, your listeners have ever grown some big tomatoes, they'll know that reddy, yellowy light. Yeah. But it wasn't. It was more of the new blue, the brighter light. So again, dismissed because there's new lights. As we got directly perpendicular to one of the roads that you could see down, is like, because there's like cutoffs and dirt roads going off left and right where all the logging is taking place. As we came up to that turnoff, we slowed down because we were now curious, and we were all discussing how bright it was, and it must have been close to the road. So we slowed down on the highway, and then now it's got to be around midnight, maybe 1 o'clock, and we ended up stopping. I was in the back seat, so I had full view of my own window, and the driver stopped when we were perpendicular because what we saw was not indicative of logging at all. We could see the light, and it was above the trees, but it was probably a good kilometer down that road. But we could see it, and it was clearly not attached to anything. There was no logging that we could see. And so we're stopped, and I'm like, okay, this isn't right. There's something, your brain is trying to make its own decisions of things it knows, but it's not anything we'd seen. And then it went completely vertical and just shot into the sky and disappeared. And I looked at the clock because I had read somewhere that, sometimes they have a way of altering your time, like maybe they, like the flashy thing from Men in Black. So I looked at the time, and the time had not changed. And he's like, well, let's go in and look. And I said, no. Have you not seen fire in the sky? Drive. And he's like, no, let's go look. And I said, drive. And I grabbed him by the back of the neck and I said, drive. And I was actually quite aggressive about it. And so he started driving. And so we drove for about a minute and a half, completely silent. And so I don't know who spoke first, but we're all like, so we all saw that, right?
Yeah.
And so we discussed it for about a minute and we decided that was the end of the discussion. We didn't see anything that we cared about. It didn't follow us home that we're aware of. And that was the end of the discussion. But that isn't the blow your mind part. That is not even the closest of the exciting part. We went on to live our lives forgetting completely about this situation. And now, whether it had anything to do with it directly, I'll never know. However, that friend that was a really close friend, I moved down to Victoria and he stayed in Prince George. And we hadn't spoken together in almost 10 years. So one night, I'm having the most uncomfortable sleep of my life. And then I'm having a nightmare. And there's beings standing at the end of my bed. And they're doing something to my foot. And I'm like, I feel like I'm now floating out the window. Hard to describe, but I just felt like I was going out through my window. And then I remember seeing my friend, who I will remain nameless because I'm sure he's paranoid of this whole story. And he was in what would have looked to me like a stretcher or some sort of a bed tied down. And he was screaming at me, get out, get out. And he was yelling my name. And when I woke up, I could not wake my dog up. My dog was in a coma sleep. And my wife was so groggy, I couldn't barely wake her up. It was like she was hungover or loaded, and she doesn't drink or do drugs. And it's just like, and now that you know how the dream starts to come to you afterwards. So I got up to go to the bathroom. And when I'm in the bathroom, I noticed that my toe was bleeding. And I had a triangle cut in my toe, a little triangle. And it was bleeding. It had bled in the bed. So I, again, not dismissed it, but I discussed it with my wife while it was fresh in my mind. We talked about the possibilities of a dream, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. There's a cut in my toe. Well, you could have stubbed it. You could have got up in the middle of the night. There was all these should have, could have, because, you know, we want to make sense of real life as opposed to anything else. So I had not heard from my friend in, like I say, almost 10 years. And I got a phone call from him that day. And he was very sheepish. And we talked for a few minutes. And I said, I had the weirdest dream last night. And he said, were you in a spaceship? And did I see you? And was I yelling at you? He saw the same freaking dream, I thought, as he did. So that made all the hairs in my head stand right up. And I have been absolutely paranoid of extraterrestrials pretty much ever since. And the whole weirdest thing I just can't wrap my head around is I've moved back here, not on purpose. It was a fluke that I moved back here. And where did I move on the island? The hotspot of UFO sightings, which was in Stewart. I didn't plan either of those, but there and out where I live are two hotspots for a paranormal activity. So I don't know how if it was
Weird,
forced on me or and yet
Yeah.
I came back here knowing when I camp out here, when I walk out to the backyard now, I'm not afraid of bears. I'm looking up.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting to go for another ride, like I'm being tracked.
Right.
So how is that for weird?
So okay, so to put things into a timeline here, so the first time you saw was the bright light out east of town.
Yeah.
And how far out of town was it? Like 50 clicks?
It would be, well, it was halfway between Tabor and Purdon, so yeah,
Something like that.
maybe 30 kilometers.
Okay. Okay. And then where you live now is closer into town than that, I assume.
No,
No, it's about
I'm about 12 kilometers from there.
okay, so pretty close to the same area.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they somehow subconsciously called you back.
Yeah.
So you're okay. So first of all, you're out there and you see this weird light, and it goes shooting like straight up into the sky super fast.
Fast enough that you couldn't follow it. Like it was like a streak, like a comet.
It's just like gone.
Yeah.
Okay. And then did it seem to be before it shot up in the sky? Did it seem to be just kind of hovering?
Well, you couldn't tell what it was, but yeah, it was just light. Like,
yeah,
I can't tell you if it was hard shelled or soft or just an entity, but it was just bright, and you couldn't see through it. You couldn't see into it. It was just bright.
Right, but it was still kind of like off a ways.
Yeah,
like not right beside the road.
No, it had to have been a kilometer. Now, not knowing how big it was, you don't.
Yeah, you can't tell.
Lose perspective, right?
For sure. Okay, interesting. So then, so after that, you moved to the island, to another hotspot, and then, sorry, what is that? Where you were when you saw this? When this visitation happened?
Yes.
Okay, and your buddy was also in the same city or not?
No, he was here.
He was up here.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they somehow, if you two guys were both on a ship of some kind, and you live in separate cities that are, how many thousand kilometers apart are those?
That'd be 800 kilometers. 800 kilometers.
Okay. So that's interesting because we know that, if they have spaceships that are capable of traveling to Earth from another planet, they have to have some kind of warp drive or something. Like, who knows what, but it's not like the kind of rockets that we have.
Yeah, and not to say that either one of the light or the dream ish were together or associated together. They both could have been coincidental. Like, I might have something in me that, because I can see a ghost in my house. I see a ghost in my house all the time. There might be something about me.
Yeah. Okay.
Might attract, or I don't know.
Right. Maybe you have the ability to see into like these other dimensions, or like you can see through the veil somehow.
Or they just allow it.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be.
Because I've seen this ghost in this house. I don't know how many times before we started building or making changes, and we described her to the neighborhood, and they're like, "Oh, that's you describing the person who owns your house."
Oh, wow.
Because my wife had seen her as well.
Yeah. So, and do you still see that?
No. Shortly after my child was born, she did a lot of opening of or closing of doors, shutting lights off, things like that. Yeah. And we said to her, in earnest, that she was actually listening or whatever, saying, "Hey, you can stay, but you have to look after my daughter. Like, you can't be." And she was around for, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 months of my daughter's life, and then we haven't seen her since. We did do some construction, and I was also told that taking apart or changing stuff in your house might release souls, or I'm not exactly sure how that works.
Yeah.
But I see that.
I mean, that's gotta freak you out the first time for sure.
It freaked us out quite a few times, because when we would see her in the kitchen only.
Oh yeah.
And she was kind of like a sepia color for us, and she
Okay.
wore this old school baking um, apron and a
Yeah.
big dress.
Oh yeah.
And my wife and I would see her, and she'd be moving to the stove all the time, all the time. And the first few times that we seen her, we both were like, did we really just see that? And then
Yeah.
we realized that, you know, nothing was happening, nothing weird was happening, that we just didn't really worry about it. So, but we seen her probably 40 times throughout the next couple of years that we lived here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you just kind of realized that she wasn't trying to like hurt you or anything like that.
She wasn't mean spirit at all.
Hmm.
Yeah, she was probably still checking her cookies. I don't know.
Yeah. Almost like a sort of like a video just replaying.
Yes, actually, in fact, because it was the same movement toward the, always in the same direction. It'd be very much like a replay.
Huh.
There could have been something in her. Yeah, that's weird. Now that you mention it, it was always the same spot that we saw her. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Like it makes you wonder, like, okay, um so maybe there's, let's say that she's real and she's there. So what's happening? Is she just like remembering? Like maybe it was just like a good memory for her where she was like, oh, maybe the smell of those cookies or something like that, right?
I
Makes you
I quite often smell baking that isn't happening. I come down and I'm like, hey, what's cooking? She's like, nothing's cooking. I'm like, oh, I smell this. And she's like,
oh.
as long as it's not burnt toast, she says. So yeah, so I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that I'm able to see more often, or is it because I'm open to seeing it that I see stuff? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know that the ghost is not, the apparition is definitely not linked to these extraterrestrial. Um, I keep calling them dreams, but because it makes me feel better.
Sure.
I still have a mark on my toe.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I've actually asked, when I had an ultrasound done, I asked them to look to see if there
Yeah.
was anything there, because I was convinced there was a tracker in my toe.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I was convinced, but I don't know how I did it. Like, was I sleepwalking? Maybe. Maybe there's a logical excuse, but the fact that my friend dreamt it the same night is, the odds are astronomical.
Yeah.
That's what put it over the top for me, because I was convinced it was a dream. Like, why wouldn't it be? But and then the dog and the wife, that you couldn't rouse them, was
Right.
was really weird.
Yeah, like especially a dog. Don't I mean, I
And
haven't had a dog for 30 years, but last I recall, dogs wake up pretty easy.
you would think that, you know, if they're going to come in to take you away, they would have to put a spell or a gas
Yeah.
or something to keep from being attacked from my dog, because that one
Yeah.
dog I had would have torn him apart
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah. Well, another well, I don't know, witness, I guess, another guy that I've talked to um had a similar thing happen where he he had a visitation exactly the same, like where they were standing at the foot of his bed. And again, same thing. His wife did not wake up. And when he finally managed to wake her up, but she was just like totally incoherent and didn't remember any of it.
That's funny. And I do recall in my dream, and when you had a dream and you're trying to scream but you can't.
Yeah.
I felt like that was what was happening to me the whole time. Like, I
Right.
was trying to scream and I could not.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine on the island. His name is Simon, the photographer. He's very big. You may have run across him. He's very big into extraterrestrial UFO stuff. He was researching the heck out of it. And one day, he and I rode the bus from Sukin to Victoria every day together. His studio was in Victoria. And he and I got talking about what he did, and I kind of let him know, and I hadn't told anybody, and I really, other than my wife and my kid, nobody knows this story now but you
Mhm.
and that person
And
and
soon millions of people, or at least dozens.
hundreds. um I well, you might gain 1 million viewers now. I So I told him, and he asked the dates, and I can't remember them now. It was a very long time ago, and he looked up and found 5 UFO sightings that night.
Wow.
Yeah. So he said there hadn't been any all week. He said, but when I looked it up, he said there was a bunch of sightings the night that you're telling me that this happened.
Holy, so he's got access to some kind of database.
Well, and he was really big into it. So I don't know where he was getting his, National Enquirer. I don't know, but he had some source that he was able to dig that information up. So, but yeah,
Interesting.
I don't know if you can dig him up again. He's a British fellow. He's blonde hair. I've been looking for him, but he went by Simon the Photographer. That was the name of his studio.
Yeah,
If you find him, he would be probably still a plethora of knowledge of this
cool.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of people out there, but it's hard to find local people sometimes, right? Like, um, I was talking to a friend of mine who had who basically saw a huge saucer, and in Prince George as well, and it was, so yours would have been around what, mid '90s?
He's moved back to 91, 92, 93. Yeah, somewhere between 93 and 95, somewhere in there.
I can't remember if my buddy Jeremy, whose last name is also Stewart, coincidentally, um,
They like
yeah,
sauce.
he was telling me about this thing where him and his friend saw this, like, well, I mean, again, it's hard to tell size and distance and stuff, but they were downtown Prince George and they saw what looked like a really huge disc, kind of out towards, between the sawmill or the airport, that direction. So out to east and towards the same direction you're talking about, but like probably a little bit closer to town. And that was, I'm not sure if that was mid '90s or if it was a little later. I think it might have been um, late '90s, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like this kind of thing has never stopped happening. And there's always been people telling these very similar stories. And, you look at the details and a lot of things are really jiving together.
I think that you're just ignorant. I'm going to use that word, to think that we are the only people in this universe.
Hmm.
Like, where would you get off saying that we're the only people? We might be the only people in our system,
Yeah,
but our system is the size of a grain of sand.
right.
So there's just no way. It's not
Yeah,
possible. Not
yeah.
possible.
Well, what this thought occurred to me about a month ago, and I can't get it out of my mind. It's like this idea of, okay, imagine you're on Tatooine and you're with Luke Skywalker and Uncle Owen. Okay. Now, maybe it's a little bit earlier when Luke's a little bit younger. Maybe he's like 12 or something. Um, and so he doesn't have free access to hop on the speeder bike and drive into Mos Eisley. But I can just imagine Uncle Owen telling Luke, yeah, no, there's, like as if that they don't know about any of the other races. Like, we're the only people. Tatooine is the only planet that has life on it, and we're the pinnacle of creation. There's no. What are you talking about? Like, no, no, no. That's all just stories. And by the way, don't go to Mos Eisley because that's a dangerous place. It's like that's exactly the story that we're telling, or that we keep hearing.
Do I have a lightsaber in this story?
Of course you do.
Okay, then it's a good story. I like it. Yeah. No, it's always occurred to me. I've always been open to it. When I was young, I used to lay in the ditch in the dark, watching the stars, and you know, realizing that some were going this way, but others would be going that way. And I'm like, how is that? How's that possible? We're turning this way. All the
Right.
stars are moving this way.
Oh, interesting. So
And
do you figure those were comets? Or
I was
maybe there's a
only
whole lot of UFOs out there.
12, when you're 12 years old, they are all freaking X-Wing fighters, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's how old I was when Star Wars came out. And I was, you were around. Were you in PG when Star Wars came out? I
No,
camped out.
I was in Surrey back then.
I camped out. Well, you wouldn't want to camp out in Surrey, but I camped out. There was about 20 of us in line to be the first to see Star Wars.
The only
I
time I ever did something like that was when my kid was around, I don't know, 10 or 12. And it was for one of the Harry Potter book releases. Or I guess it was a movie. I forget. Anyway, we stood in line somewhere for hours and for some Harry Potter thing. I was like, this movie is terrible. But
Could you imagine though, like the times from when I was 12 till now? Would you
yeah,
let a 12-year-old go camp out downtown?
I would not downtown.
No.
Maybe at Pine Center. No, probably not.
Yeah, no, I would not. So, yeah, that's how much things have changed since uh,
Yeah,
but yeah,
for
no,
sure.
I've always been a space fanatic. I watched every single space mission launch. I followed all the no,
Shuttle.
shuttle right up till the Challenger, and then I kind of weaned myself off. I have not watched much since. I do have the ISS channel. I do find myself watching that. I don't know, the NASA channel.
Oh yeah, cool.
It
I didn't even know there was a thing.
Yeah, and it's sometimes they have just some BS people talking about what's going on the shuttle or in the station, but quite often it's just live feeds of them working, just doing crap, and it's fun to watch.
Okay, so you probably have the scoop on this. I don't. I'm gonna get it even wrong as to what ship it happened on. Was it the ISS, or was it the Russian or the Chinese something? There's some kind of craft up there that's
It,
in orbit right now, and they found a hole drilled in it.
oh well, I didn't hear about the whole drill, but I did hear that the Chinese scuttled one of their satellites,
Okay.
and it could have very much caused a lot of damage in case you hadn't seen the movie Gravity. Um,
Yeah.
like it literally could have been disastrous to everybody up there, but somehow it managed to change its orbit and actually go out to space. But now there's junk floating in space, so if you ever get up to hyperspeed, you better have some sort of a shield on the
Yeah.
front because something's coming through.
Yeah. I've heard some. Well, I don't know how accurate it is, but some people are saying that there's like it's basically turning into a big junkyard up there already.
Yeah. Do you remember the show in the what was it called? It had Steve Austin in it, Lee Majors,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they used to fly up and then grab junk and they used to bring it back and sell it. That's what they did.
Oh,
They were
I don't
salvaging
remember that.
space junk. Darn if I can remember the name of it. The Taejong or whatever they call it is the space station, the Chinese space station. I
Yeah.
have not heard anything about a hole in it.
Yeah. So apparently somebody drilled a hole in the wall in the hull,
I guess they
and
must have had Shaw come up and try and do some cabling or something.
yeah, probably.
Because
It's
we
just
told
like,
you everybody's
we got
involved.
some new fiber for you guys. It's gonna be rad.
Totally high speed. Yeah. No, I had not heard that, but I will look that up.
I think it was the Russian craft, whatever that is.
What is it? I'm gonna put
I don't know.
drill.
They're even
hole.
talking about, I don't know. They're even talking about a lawsuit because I haven't really been following the story in detail, but the last thing I heard was that
Oh yeah,
that
and here it
that
is. It says
Russians, right?
in August 2018, NASA ground control detected depressurization aboard the ISS, which was traced to a 2 millimeter wide drill hole in part of the Russian Soyuz spacecraft docked to the space station at the time. So it was the Russian Soyuz, but it was docked.
Attached. Okay.
Yeah. So when they opened and open pressure, they detected a depressurization. Huh.
So now they're saying that one of the Americans astronauts did it on purpose to the Russian craft, which is
Well,
like,
now I hope they did after what they've done.
wow, man. Like, okay. Um, I don't know if you read this book. Are you into conspiracy theories much?
The only one I read that I really enjoyed was The Last Dissenting Witness, written by Gene Hill. It was about JFK.
Hmm.
And the only reason I read it was because I met Gene Hill when I was in Nashville at a book signing. My friend was completely blah blah over JFK, and I just was walking around, and there she was doing a book signing, and there was nobody in the lineup. So her
Oh,
and I talked for almost 2 hours, and she
whoa.
was telling me all about stuff. And anyway, I read her book, and it really made me realize that maybe, just maybe, there was a cover up there.
Yeah. There
That's
in the
how
Prince George Public Library, there's a book by a guy named Mike Barra, who you might have seen Mike because he shows up on Ancient Aliens sometimes. But his book, he's got a few books, but one of them is about the conspiracy theories and JFK and NASA and the Freemasons. So it's like, all the crazy shit you can think of, throw it all together. But
I do love the Freemasons.
read this book, man. It's fascinating. And
Is there
you
words
gotta
in it?
wonder.
Because I can't read anywhere. I'll have to get the audio book.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, okay, cool. Well, so hey, one thing, you spend a ton of time in the bush or on lakes at least.
In the bush, yeah.
Yeah. You ever seen a Bigfoot?
That I wish, because I go nowhere without good cameras.
Hmm.
Although they would probably not work for whatever reason.
Yeah, exactly.
I am always packing camera heat. I film everything all the time. So it would be a dream to see a Bigfoot.
Get some eye shine at least.
So introduce myself, maybe get them
Yeah.
on a show.
Apparently, the Bigfoot can communicate telepathically as well.
Well, the fact that they don't make a lot of noise, would probably suggest that would be because people say they hear them howl and stuff. I've watched a lot of the Bigfoot shows
Yeah.
and how they break branches for directions, for warnings and stuff like that.
Right.
I did see one show where I swear a guy was going to find it. I thought for sure he was getting close, but he was yanking our chain, I guess. I don't know for TV, but
Yeah, you never know.
yeah. So I don't know, but I thought for sure he was going to see something. But anyway, he's out there.
Yep, I think so.
Do you
And
think there's more than one? It's like all the way down to the northwest.
oh yeah, there can't just be one.
Yeah.
And they're also on the East Coast, which I never realized before. But I've found out that there's like a ton of people in like Maine and around in the where maybe like North Carolina or someplace like that, where there's just like apparently like there's populations in those areas as well. So it's not just a West Coast thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I hope one day, and I hope they're nice.
Apparently, they're usually kind of nice, but sometimes they get mean.
Well, if you start flicking that jerky at them, I think it's
Yeah,
when they get upset,
yeah.
according to commercials.
How can you blame them? Or if you like steal their kokanee,
Oh yeah, 100%.
they don't
That's
like that.
they can keep that shit.
Uh, so okay, so let me think if I want to ask you any. I was going to ask you more about your encounter. Um, when you felt like you were like floating out the window, and
Yeah.
that's another thing that a lot of people say. Um, Not so much people that I've talked to myself, but I've heard other people say that in in other interviews where so it's like this perception that you're leaving your normal space, like physically,
Yeah.
which I find is quite interesting.
Now,
Um,
now, do you leave in a soul carton and leave the meat package behind? Like I don't know.
yeah, maybe, but and there's conflicting evidence on that too, because like sometimes, okay, so obviously, if you got a chunk cut out of your toe, that happened physically,
Yeah,
but that could have happened in your bedroom before they took you out, or
that would be
yeah,
the order of, because that's what I felt like woke me up. That's what I felt like made me aware of what was happening. Is that
okay,
it was happening at the end of my bed and something was happening to my foot.
yeah.
So that would have been the start of the events.
And was your foot like sticking out of the covers or something like that,
Always,
or yeah,
always.
okay,
I probably
um,
had I probably had all the covers kicked off because I sleep like at,
oh, okay. So
14
ET comes in and he's like, "Hey, check it out, low hanging fruit."
why does it
Yeah,
stink?
scalpel.
Cut the stink off.
so so other people though report like physical things happening to them on board the ship. Um,
And that I have nothing.
yeah,
Like all I recall is my buddy yelling at me, telling me to get out. And he was yelling my name. And
and when that happened, could you see any kind of context, like where he was, what kind of room he was in, or was he also strapped into a bed?
he was strapped into something. Yes, he was
Yeah.
100% strapped into something. And there's two people or two things being standing beside him, near his feet, not at the end, but kind of along his legs, one on both sides. And he had his head up because his head wasn't strapped, and he was looking over and yelling. And I don't see, I can't remember. And I tried, like, if there was things in the background,
Hmm.
like I could not recall that at all. And it'd be even harder for me today. But I still remember exactly him, like it happened yesterday. I can see that.
Yeah.
So it would, I would think that I would be able to remember more. I mean, perhaps if somebody put me into hypnosis, they might be able to find out more or
Yeah,
something.
maybe. I wonder. Oh,
I did.
would you be open to doing that?
I yes and no, I suppose, depending
Yeah.
on where the information went, because they'd find out about other things.
Yeah.
I, I saw a movie when I was 12 or 13. It was based on a true story. Some people driving down the road and they were abducted and they lost 12 hours of their time. And that's what the time thing was in my mind to check.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um, they did all kinds of experiments on them that they could describe completely, and nobody could prove otherwise what happened. But back then, because this would have been in the 60s, early 70s, it happened,
Yeah.
they dismissed it as a dream, and the people were chairs, and it was in their room and they never left, they weren't driving, like, so they really dismissed it. And I wish I could remember the name of the movie or the book that it was based on, but it was
I,
based on a true story.
I wonder if that was based on the Betty and Barney Hill story.
Let me look
Uh,
that book quick.
check those guys out because their story is similar to that. They were driving home
Benny and
from
Barney.
Betty and Barney Hill, and they were driving home from a weekend getaway, and yeah, they saw a light, so they pulled over,
Yeah, that's
and
them.
then
That's
yeah,
the
that's
one.
them. So next thing you
1984.
know, they're at home, and they're like, "What the hell happened?" And they lost several hours,
Mhm.
and suddenly found themselves home. And then basically they kind of pieced together parts of their story, and it was just really weird. And eventually they ended up going under hypnosis, and they actually were able to draw pictures of the craft that they saw. And Betty drew what she called a star map, which was like, I guess, something that the aliens showed her while they were on the craft, which some other people then tried to do some analysis on to figure out what stars they were and stuff like that. Now, so there was some one of the analysts came up with this idea that this was a certain area of space that corresponded to the map that Betty drew. And there's a planet there, or a star, I guess, called Zeta Reticulon or something. But then later on, somebody claimed to have discredited that. But that's the thing, is you never know. These people who are claiming to be just debunkers, well, all they're really doing is just shitting on everybody's story. So why should we believe you? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've always had an interest in it, and it also occurred to me, because I liked those things. I liked that movie, Fire in the Sky. I liked all that stuff. That's the only movie to this day that frightens the shit out of me. By the way, Fire in the Sky.
I've got to watch that. That's the second time somebody's mentioned that this week.
You should see it. It's freaky, and the more you know about space, the freakier it is, really, because I think that is also based on a true story.
Huh.
I'm almost
Yeah, I
100.
think you're right. I do recall something about that.
Mhm.
It's based on another encounter, I think.
I think it's on Netflix.
Is it?
I'm sure it was suggested to me on Netflix a while back, and I said nope.
Okay, I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
One movie that really scared me that's sort of similar is it's called
E.T.
no
Ghost
oh, shit, I can't remember what it's called. It's not The Sixth Sense. It's something like The Fifth Kind. No, the fourth kind, or something like that. It's referencing the Hynek scale. So there's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right? Maybe that's it. I think this other movie is just called The Third Kind, and it's fucking scary, man, because they put all this like crazy imagery, like owls and shit, where when all these weird things are happening. It's like, oh, that was scary. But I gotta watch that again. That's a good show. Um, yeah, but I mean, you're right. Like, are we alone?
No,
Probably not. Like, mathematically speaking. Um,
they could be advanced enough to be sitting in our boardrooms with us, like
absolutely.
undetected.
Although I'm sure they have better things to do than listen to our boring board meetings. But they
Well,
are watching us. They're watching us.
if they
And
were in on ours today, they've been studying stress, right?
that's right. Or at least they were studying print cues or something. But
We could be the
the
monkeys in the cage, but
yeah, all the ancients are telling us the same thing though. Like all the ancient mythologies say the same thing. There were these beings that were watching us, and then they interacted with us in various ways. And a lot of them go into pretty explicit detail as to how they actually made us, and we're their little robots or children or whatever. Some people call us their slaves. It's hard to say exactly what their intentions were, and the stories don't always agree, but the stories all do tell that there's somebody out there who was involved in us being here.
Like
So you
Stargate.
got to wonder. Yeah, Stargate. Yeah, it's a good one.
No, I don't wonder. I know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's cool. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think I'll let you go unless you have anything else you want to talk about.
If they come for me in the padded truck and the jacket that hugs you and keeps you warm with the straps, I'm going to deny it all.
Sounds good. So, well, thanks a lot, Scott. We've been talking to Scott Stewart, and what a fascinating story. We'll see the rest of you guys next time on the channel here. And if you have stories, hit me up with it and tell me the stories, and let's get you on here as well. I'm going to put a link below this so that you can sign up to talk to me. Okay, catch you guys later. Hey guys, just want to let you know about this new sponsor of ours. It's a website called neandertees.com. They sell t-shirts for Neanderthals, aliens, ETs, Bigfoot, sci-fi fans, and all kinds of other geeks and nerds. So if that sounds like you or someone you know, go down to neandertees.com, check out their selection of awesome t-shirts. Yeah, give them a visit today. Thanks a lot.